Hi, everyone. So this will probably be a little long, but please listen to it to the end if you can. One, I want to give a big shout out to my daughter, Rylee, and to everybody that supported her during this run yesterday. Most of it goes to her. Of course, she put in all the physical effort to this, but there was a lot of great people supporting her yesterday. There's a lot of new people I met yesterday that just went out and supported her and were just absolutely inspired. She just lit up the people around her that were racing with her yesterday. And I know she's made a huge impact on so many people yesterday, to include myself. So it started out yesterday morning at 7 a.m. Well, before 7 a.m. It was blustery cold out. I could barely keep my hands out of my gloves yesterday morning. At the start, it was so cold, and she jumping into her first 50-mile ultra. She's only raced a 15-miler. That's the farthest she's ever raced, was a 15-miler, or a little bit over that. She didn't even go into a marathon ever. She didn't say, I'm going to go run a marathon and take baby steps. She went from a 15-miler to finishing a 50-miler last night here at the Badger Mountain Challenge. And I just kind of want to walk you through the day of what my day looked like, what I'm guessing her day looked like, because I don't know what was in her head yet. So back to the 7 a.m., here it is. It's cold, windy, no sun. I've ran this race before. I know what it takes. I know how difficult it is. I know where the pain points are. I know when the knees start hurting. And here I am, and her mom, we're both there. Her stepdad, we're all there ready and willing to crew her all day. But here we are, letting our daughter loose into the wild there. And she was going to, she was determined to finish this race. And there was no doubt in her mind. I know there was no doubt that she was not going to finish this race. But having everything up against her, it made it really difficult as a parent to watch my child go through that. So she started the race, and we met her at the first aid station. And she was all smiles. I call her Smiley Rylee because she is all smiles. Her giggle, her laugh, her smile. Even when she's hurting, even when something's bothering her, she smiles. She doesn't do this out of hardness. She does this. This is just her way of dealing with things, and we know that. So here she is. She's running up. There's a gentleman named Mark. He's an experienced ultra runner, and they're pacing together. And so I'm like, whew, all right, she's got somebody to talk to, because she didn't go out with any headphones, not on any video screen. The phone was put away the whole time. And here she is just chatting it up and, getting to know people. Something that takes her out of her uncomfortable, self too, because she's not one to just strike that up. So here she is, about an hour and a half into the race at the first aid station. She just went up the first mountain, Badger Mountain, down the backside of that mountain, across over to the aid station to just start tackling the next mountain, Candy Mountain. And she's feeling good. She's, high spirits. And then next time we were going to go see her, I saw her over at the Vineyards. It's Jacobs Road. So it was going to take a little bit for that. There's some cross country to do once she gets up the mountain and down the mountain. It just every time a little check mark, she made the next aid station. That's a check mark in my head. She's made it this far. And she's still smiling. She's still laughing. She's still with Mark. And Mark is, he's over from Redmond. It's over on the west side. He's, like I said, an experienced ultra runner. He's running the 100-miler in this race. And so he's got 2 of these laps to do today. But he's all, just enjoying Rylee's company out there. They're running together. They leave the vineyards, and I know the next part is going to be tough. Like, that's a long, grueling, flat, and then a ton of rolling hills, big, big hills, called the Jeep Hills. And then we get to go see her out at McBee at her drop bag. So that's kind of the big first point. By the time she gets there, she's going to hit 18 miles. And so we get there, we're waiting for her, and she gets to McBee. She's still smiling, still doing great. Her knees are a little tender at this point. So here I am, and I'm sure her mom felt the same way. We're watching her progress mile by mile, checkpoint by checkpoint, and she's making it. She's making it strong. She's starting to ache. She's starting to get some pains. Mile 18, starting to feel some miles on her. But her willingness and her readiness and her determination is still there. Her positive attitude was still there. She was doing great on keeping up with her electrolytes, her fluids. There was a ton of stuff she had to keep in her mind of what she had to do out there to keep herself in the game. And she did it. She did it on her own. Just fuel, fluids, taking care of the feet. But at the same time as she's taking care of herself, I'm a nervous wreck. Because I don't ever want to see my baby suffer. And what she was doing yesterday was suffering. But she was doing it willingly. And it's just as hard or harder when your child is out there putting herself to the test and suffering and okay with it. There's a lot of big pride and a lot of inspiration, and blessed to have her as such a strong kid. But as a parent, we're almost governing, we almost want to govern what they're willing to suffer for. And I had to let go. I couldn't show any of that out there. And so watching your baby suffer, watching your little girl suffer out there, and reminding yourself, like, this is hard. There's a lot of adults that have already quit at this point. And now she's getting ready to turn into the hardest part of the race. 12 miles of just grueling mountain, McBee Mountain. She's coming up she's going to go climb to the top of this thing. And the first mile is just brutal. She's cussed at me before when I've taken her up there on fun runs. She hates that area because it's wind, it's cold, it's rocky, it's steep, but she does it. And yesterday she just went out and did it, and she's still with Mark. I should tell you, at this point, she's still with Mark. And Mark is supposed to be running the 100, and I'm thinking, wow, he's holding himself back and staying with Rylee. He's throwing his race to be with Rylee. And at the end of this story, we'll talk a little bit about Mark and him and I and how we talked. We're connected on Instagram now. He's definitely one of Rylee's crew and biggest fans now. But so now they're going into the 12 miles, going up the hill, up McBee, up to Chandler Mountain. So there's another peak that they got to go hit on top of the other peak and then come back. And then go do all of what she just did again. So that was tough because it got cold up there. It presented itself like it was going to rain and storm. It got super cloudy, really windy. And here they are battling up on top of that mountain now. And while they're up there battling, all I can do is sit down, I was going to my house every once in a while or grab something to eat, but I was sitting in my car a lot of the time because I was just on call. I was like QRF, Redcon 1, Andy, I'm not letting my little girl be too far ahead or being there always ready, pick her up. But there was no pickup. And she went out there and she finished that 12-mile loop. And she comes back, and now she has 18 miles left in the bag for this race to go. And her knees are sore. And some crying started. And by this time, a lot of adults have dropped at this point now because their knees just said, enough, we're done. Or their electrolytes. And so her mom, her stepdad, Jeff, we're all there ready for her. And now she's got a pacer, Cameron. It's a coworker of her mom's, and he's an ultra runner. So now he's going to pace her back. And Mark, Mark's got to go do his own race now. We've thanked him. We're so appreciative of him for being with her. And he's like, I have daughters of my own, and I just wanted to be with her the whole time. So, Mark, thank you so much for being with her for that 32 miles out there with her. You've made an impact on her life, I can tell you that. And I know she's made an impact on yours. You guys are going to be new buddies. And thank you from all of our family, Mark, for doing that. I got to catch up with Mark at the end of the race too, and we'll talk more about that. So now she's with Cameron. And even though they've come off the steepest, the more technical, hard parts of this race, the hard part is getting home and just staying in the game, because now her knees hurt to the point where she was crying. She wasn't willing to quit, but she was hurting, and you could see it. And it killed her mom and I just to watch that. And as a parent, you just want to pull her out, make the decision for her. But we're letting her make the decisions out here. This is her race, not our race, So you got to remind yourself of that, parents. When your kids are out there playing sports or doing something tough or suffering, you got to let them go. You got to let them do their race, do their, let them make the calls. Yeah, we're risk assessment and, we want to make sure they stay alive. But when you know they're going to stay alive, a little bit of pain, you got to let them work through that. And it was tough for me. It was really tough for me to just let her work through that pain. So, I changed up her socks, took in some more fuel. She didn't want to stop. She didn't want to sit down. She didn't want to do anything. Here's some people that race these all the time. They sit in a chair, they take a break, and Rylee's just, I don't want to take a break. I want to keep going, and you got to remind her a little bit about the fuel, pick some food, get some carbs, get some energy, get some calories, get some electrolytes in. But for the most part, she's maintaining her health and her longevity of this race on her own. And so her and Cameron leave, and I'm going to go catch them at the next checkpoint, which will be at the Vineyards again on Jacobs Road. And so I meet him at Jacobs Road, and he's getting water bottles filled. She's using the restroom. So this is a good sign that she had to use the restroom. Anytime you're out there on a long run and you don't have to pee, something's really bad. You have got to get some fluids in you. So it's a sign of relief when I saw her go to the bathroom. I know she's still hydrated. She's been doing a good job of keeping up with the fluids all day, the electrolytes. She's in good spirits. She's kind of foggy. There's some brain fog setting in that I saw, but I didn't want to point it out too much. Made a couple of jokes about it, but we stayed off the topic of knees. I wanted to jump right in and be like, oh, how are your knees? But definitely didn't want to hit that point, because you already know that they're bugging the hell out of her right at this point, to the point of pain, probably. And so we made some other jokes about Candy Mountain coming up, and just kept her in good spirits. She was laughing with Cameron, and they took off. they didn't stay long at this aid station. I probably stayed longer at this aid station last year when I ran this race than she did. And now you've got this is where it feels like, hey, I'm on the stretch home, but there's still a lot of mountain to climb before I get home. And truly, there's 2 mountains to climb and come down before you make it to the finish line at this point, and it's going to get dark. So now it's time to start running through the dark. And out there in the wild, like, yeah, there's a ton of people, but there's a ton of elements that could, rocks, tripping hazards, just being in the dark, being in the cold, the wind is picking up. And even though at this point I could still see she was in the race, it was still worrisome for me. Like, you want it so bad for your kids, you want it so bad. And I'm not about she's already told me early on when she was in knee pain and I said, hey, you got to make the calls here. And she quickly told me, I am not quitting. Like, she was very adamant. I am not quitting. So never bringing that up again with her, because I already know her response. So it's not even worth talking about that. So here she is going up Candy Mountain. We're going to meet her at the front side of Candy Mountain. And we get to the front of Candy Mountain and things are getting really tough. It's dark. It's super cold. She's in pain. She's been running all day. She's now hit 13 hours. So at that 13-hour-ish mark, somewhere in there, front side of Candy Mountain, she wasn't even going to stop. Like, I've done that before too. I've blown right past that aid station. A friend of mine came charging out for blowing past that aid station. And he brought me some fuel on the go to check on me, because at this point you're seeing that last mountain to finish, Badger Mountain. And you're like, that's all I got to do, get it up and down that thing, and the finish line is in front. So I know what was going through her head somewhat. I'm sure there were some different thoughts too for her, but I've been there before at that point. And so Cameron, her pacer, is doing an awesome job keeping her in this race, just being out there for her support out there on the run. There's no help from him. It's just encouragement and just having somebody with you by your side. And she's blown past this aid station. I just want to hug, but she's in tears and pain. She gives me a little hug and just keeps on going. And there's now about five-ish miles left to go, but these are some tough 5. These are some really tough 5. Her knees are broken down. Her legs are sore and hurting and fatigued and exhausted. Her mind's probably just, it's mentally tough and strong, but I'm sure there was just some points and some thoughts that she was having to work through and deal through in this sufferfest that she was now in. She was at, it was in that peak of that suffer. I've been there before. So now she's running towards Badger Mountain. We're going to meet her on the front side of the finish line. So this is it. We know now, 100% confident that barring outside of like a rock trip or something up on top of that mountain, she's coming to that finish line in the front eventually at night. So here we are waiting out there for her, and man, were my nerves on fire. And as I was sitting there waiting, the wind really picked up. Like, it got windy, and I'm sure the wind chills now dropped into the 20s. And the temperatures were falling fast. Like, it was cold. There was people that were supposed to do another lap for their 100-miler that dropped at the 50 because it got so cold. And they're like, I can't go back out in that cold. And here she is battling up on top of a mountain, Badger Mountain, in that cold and wind. And now she's coming down the front side, step by step, just barely making those steps now because the knees are just... they're ready to be done, but the mind's not ready to be done yet. She is just taking her body, and I've been there before, so I know what she was going through. She's taking control of her body with her mind, and she's taking it to the finish line. She's not quitting when she's tired. She's not quitting when she hurts. She's quitting when she's finished, and here she comes. So here she comes. She's off the front steps. She's now on the flat, winding down to come through the chute to the finish line, and it was emotions for all of us. Her grandma was there. Her mom and stepdad were there. I was there. Everybody was there cheering her on, waiting for her. We had flowers for her from the Iron Edge OCR team. Thank you guys so much for all the flower donations. But now it's her. She gets to the finish line. She's just ready to be done. She got done. She finished. Very emotional, but still in good spirits. And she is now the youngest male or female, woman or man, to finish that Badger Mountain 50 miler at 15 years old. And she did it. She did it with her head, she did it with her heart, and she did it with her body. And so now the race is over. She just wants to go home. That's what she keeps telling us. I just want to go home. And I'm talking about Epsom salt bath. She's like, I don't even want a bath tonight. I just want to go home. So she went home with her mom. I sat there in my car for a little bit, just so emotional. I am so proud of her, and I didn't know how to put all the thoughts together and the emotions together on what I was feeling until this morning when I woke up, but I just had to sit there. I just had to sit there and be amazed and just take it in that my child is no longer a child. Like, she went out and she proved to every kid that was sitting here in the Tri-Cities that was not doing that, because there was nobody else left on the course her age or, a teenager. All other teenagers here. She had a friend that he ran the 100-miler, but he had some things happen and he had to quit around. He had to pull out of the race around the 30-mile mark yesterday. So now she is the only teenager out there, while all the other teenagers on a Friday night are warm, happy, video gaming, sitting on their phones. And she's out here setting a new standard, setting a new benchmark, setting an example of our kids can do more. Our kids can suffer. It's okay to suffer. We don't push them into that suffering. You let them put that into themselves if they want to. But they can do it. They can go do a lot more things than what we give them credit for. And I just hope that every teenager out here is inspired by her and goes and does something. I know there's a lot of adults that were in that race, that were volunteers, that were coordinating the race, that were out there running, that were out there spectating, completely blown away that Rylee was out there at 15. And yes, it can be a little controversial, letting a kid run an ultra, but her mom and I did not tell her, ask her anything to get her in this race. She willingly wanted to do this. The fire was lit when she was over in Abu Dhabi, and she completed that very difficult world championship race over in the desert, over in United Arab Emirates, in a foreign country. First time ever running in sand dunes. And that fire was lit to come home and do something bigger when she got home, or something harder. And she decided to do the 50-mile Badger. That was on her. So as much as her mom and I wanted her to not do this, we knew this was important to her. So this morning I wake up and I collect all of my thoughts, because my thoughts were just a jumbled wreck. I mean, I was a nervous wreck all day yesterday. Just waiting for her to hit that checkpoint, that next checkpoint, to check on her, make sure she was okay, make sure she was, not hurt. You don't want your kids hurt. You don't want them sad. You don't want them suffering. But so I was just a jumble wreck going to bed last night. But I woke up this morning and the first thought I had this morning was, I will never, ever, 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 ever not do something because I think it's too hard from here on out. Like, my daughter just ripped off the governor. She just ripped off the governor of anything that I've governed in my life because I thought it was too hard or too difficult or too scary. And this time going forward, I will never limit myself because I think it's too hard or too scary. Yes, there's calculated risks that I got to take so I don't lose my life over it. But Rylee, you just lit a bigger, newer fire under your dad. You went out and you proved to yourself and you proved to all of us, you didn't have to prove to anybody, but you went out there and you showed the world that a 15-year-old can have the mindset to go do very difficult adult things if they put their mind to it. And you put your mind to it, you put your heart into it, you gave it your all. I know there were times that you just hurt and you were suffering out there, but you stuck it to the finish line. And we are all so proud of you, and the world is inspired by you. And now we'll back up a little bit with Mark. I'll be tagging him some videos and some pictures here, but Mark, from the bottom of all of our hearts, thank you so much. Mark ended up doing the 50-miler last night instead of the 100 because he said this was his best race ever, running out there with Rylee for 31 miles. He's done up to 200-mile ultras before, or maybe even greater. I don't know his full background yet, but this guy is a seasoned ultra runner, and this was his favorite race of all time now. From all of us, Mark, thank you so much for running with Rylee. And I know you've taught her a lot of things just in that little bit of time you've spent together, and she's taught you things. And we are all so, so grateful for you and so thankful for you. Thank you, Mark. And if you guys could reach out and just send Mark a message and thank him, I'll post his. And so Cameron, too, thank you for running with Rylee for her, the last little bit over a third of the race left. And I'm sure you guys did a lot of bonding as well, and you saw a lot of things in Rylee last night. And I know you're inspired, and she's probably inspired by you too, Cameron. And we thank you so much too for going out there and being her pacer on the back end of this race and just letting her take it to the finish line and being there for her. We are all so grateful for that too. There's a lot of awesome humans in this world, especially in the endurance world and the athletics, adult athletes. So if you're wanting to find a great community of people, start getting into running clubs and start getting into other athlete clubs here or around the world. You'll meet some awesome people. All right, last slide, I promise, last video. So just a little takeaway, everybody. When you come up to something and you think, oh, I'm too tired to do this today, or I'm too sore to do this today, or life is too busy today to do this, remember Rylee. Remember that 50 miles that she was too tired probably at some point, too sore, too cold, too mentally exhausted, too physically exhausted in this 50-mile ultra marathon yesterday. But she took it to the finish line because she set out on a goal to start and finish something really, really big and something beyond her normal age group activity. And she stuck it out to the finish line. So remember that when things get too hard or too, you start trying to talk yourself out of it. Oh, Rylee! Good job, Rylee. Come on, sweetie.